In today's video we are going to tackle a stitch called the open star stitch. This is a vintage stitch pattern that produces a really nice dense fabric, and it doesn't quite show so well with the yarn I've used, but you do get these cute little eyelets that come with it. It is just a 4-row repeat, so it's nice and short, and actually in this stitch pattern there are no purl stitches involved, but we do use a couple of different techniques that you don't often see used in the more modern stitch patterns that use just knit and purl stitches. Open star stitch is not a reversible pattern, so if I flip my sample over you can see that the back looks very different to the front. That being said, this is a stitch pattern that lays nice and flat. You don't need any selvage stitches at the ends to get nice straight edges, so it is a great one to work into a project like a dishcloth if you're wanting some really dense texture and you're wanting something that lays really nice and flat. The pattern multiple for this stitch is really nice and easy. All that you want to make sure that you do is that you cast on a number that is a multiple of 3. So as long as you can divide the number of stitches that you cast on by 3, then you're good to go. I always like to use the long tail cast on for any project that I use, but you can use any cast on that you like for this method, it will still work. In this stitch pattern, all of your odd numbered rows, so row 1 and row 3, are wrong side rows. So when you work those and your project grows, you're going to have the wrong side of your work facing you. Now to start row 1, you are going to want to knit 2 stitches. Now we are going to jump into what's essentially a 4-stitch repeat, but with a slight twist, that we're going to work all the way across until 1 stitch before the end of our row. You are going to start by working a yarn over increase, and for me as a continental knitter, I just lift and hold that working yarn with my right hand needle. Then you are going to want to carry on and knit 3 stitches. After you've knit that 3rd stitch, we're going to want to lift this 1st stitch of that 3 up and over the other 2 stitches and completely off our needles. So you are going to pop your left hand needle into that stitch from left through to right. Pick it up and give it a bit of a stretch, and then you are going to pop your index finger on the other 2 stitches so they don't accidentally slip off the needles, because on this first row in particular it can be a little bit fiddly. And then you are going to lift that stitch up and over and off your needle, and you will have a little bar that you've created here, and you will have gone from a block of 3 to a block of 2 that are kind of hugged by that first stitch that you lifted over. Let me show you that once more. So you start your 4-stitch repeat with a yarn over increase, and then you're going to knit the next 3 stitches. Then you're going to pop your left hand needle into the first of those 3 stitches, not into the yarn over, from left through to right. Lift it up, hold the other 2 stitches on your needles, and you're going to bring it up, over and off the right hand needle, and then you will have gone from a yarn over and 3 stitches to a yarn over and 2 stitches, and you're going to repeat that block of 4 stitches all the way across until you have just 1 stitch left to work, and that should come after you have worked a full set of repeats. So you should have finish here with your 2 stitches hugged by that 3rd stitch that you have lifted up and over and off your needles, and that is the point that I will rejoin you. Finish off row 1 by knitting that final stitch. Row 2 is a nice and easy row. You are just going to knit your way all the way across, knitting all your stitches, and when it comes to your yarn over increases, you just want to knit them normally. You don't want to knit them through the back loop or anything, because we do want to create those little eyelets, and those are done by knitting the yarn over increases in the normal way rather than knitting them through the back loop, which closes up the hole they create. So row 2, nice and easy, just knit your way all the way along your row. Row 3 is essentially the reverse of row 1, because what we want to do is to stagger these little eyelets so that our texture is staggered rather than having them stacked on top of each other. So to start row 3, you are going to knit 1 stitch. Next you're going to jump into that 4-stitch repeat, but this time round it's worked the opposite way to the way it was worked in row 1. So you are going to start by knitting 3 stitches. Once you've worked those 3 stitches, just like with row 1, you are going to grab the first of the 3 with your left hand needle from left through to right, and you are going to lift that stitch up and over the other 2 stitches that you worked and completely off your needles. And you should then have 2 stitches that are hugged by the stitch that you lifted up and over your other 2 stitches. Then you are going to work a yarn over. So let's just go through that once more. You're going to knit 3, lift the first of those 3 stitches, making sure not to accidentally lift the yarn over, up, over and off your needles and over the 2 stitches that you worked after that first one. Then finish the repeat with a yarn over, and you're going to repeat that combination all the way along your row until you have 2 stitches left before the end of the row, and that should come just after a yarn over, and that is where I will rejoin you. These final 2 stitches of row 3 you are just going to knit. Row 4 is exactly the same as row 2. You are going to knit every single stitch, including those yarn overs, and don't forget, with the yarn overs you are not wanting to knit them through the back loop, you just want to knit them normally, because we do want to create that eyelet effect that this stitch pattern has. So row 4, just to recap, is all knit stitches. To grow your project, you would now repeat these 4 rows over and over until the project is the size that you want it to be. When it comes to casting off your work, you want to cast off knitwise during a row 4. So instead of just knitting across for your row 4, you are going to work a knitwise cast off. Just one thing to note when you do that is make sure that you cast off nice and loosely, otherwise your work is going to pull in at the top and then it won't lay flat. Before I leave you to your knitting, I just want to remind you that I do have a set of written instructions that accompanies this video. They are on my blog and I will link that down in the description for you below. And if you want to try another stitch pattern after tackling this one, then I will link one to inspire you here.